weights.
I have a good question for you. You've now referenced twice that you would not have somebody deadlift until they can at least do a body weight pull up as a prerequisite. Can you take me through the major lifts, and is there an exercise for each one of those that you would consider a prerequisite before you would do like a bilateral squat? Is it a Bulgarian squat or a lunge first? Do you have one for each?
Yeah, so I have like a full progression for squatting, and again, it's the idea of like laying those stepping stones out so people can make sure that when we use the expression of function as the test of function, we're missing the boat, right? Like if you were to sit down and write a test, like I studied history and political science before I got into this nonsense. And one of my tests I had to write was like this 50-page essay, right? So it's like you study for the test, and that's the practicing of like the unilateral movements and these prerequisites. But the writing of the test is something totally different. You don't get smarter by writing tests, right? You don't get better at squatting necessarily with a caveat. Obviously, the skill of squatting comes with it, but to be able to lay out these stones for people so they can acquire these base level primary principles, these competencies that'll teach them what it feels like and what muscles to use to make sure that knee stays out. So for me, it's just easy. Squatting progressions are counterbalance, goblet, front, high, then low. And then preceded by each one of those is stationary lunge, walking lunge, sprinter pose, single leg RDL, and hip airplane.
Wow, in that order.
Yeah, because it's plane specific. Like if I need to low bar squat, right? And I do need to low bar squat, I need to make sure my hips are abducted and externally rotated. I have a broad base in my low bar squat. That's what helps me be so strong in it, right? I'm not going to low bar squat with my feet close together. That's dumb. That's a longer range of motion. That doesn't bode well for anyone. So, but I think, look, do I have the mobility to get into that plane, and can I stabilize with the muscles in isolation my hip in that relative position? So a hip airplane, stand on one leg, and then rather than doing like leg swings like you would, like you're warming up to go for a run, put that foot on the ground, because that's where you're going to need it when you're squatting, because that foot's going to be on the ground. Then open your pelvis up to the same relative
McGill
degree.
plane, yeah?
Hey?
A McGill plane?
A what?
McGill plane. Is that what it called, a McGill? Stu McGill.
He calls it something different.
Yeah.
No, he just put his name on everything. This guy just can't. You can't fucking do this, man. Like you can't just create a monopoly on everything.
I thought he did it first.
And I'm sure people have been doing this for a long time. That's why I'm not asinine enough to sign my fucking name.
It's like when you guys wouldn't let me call an overhead press a Sal press. The same thing. That should be called a Sal press.
Calm down, Sal.
Yeah, everyone has a Jordan beard right now in this room. Fuck off, man. Are you serious?
Fucking
I don't know.
Jordan Jr. beard.
Okay, but that's what you're talking about.
I don't know.
I've always
now I'm upset.
Oh wow.
Can you upset it as like a shallow plane from now on, please?
We'll give you the shallow hip thrust.
Just think, fuck off. Don't go there. That's a contentious issue lately. Apparently, that's bad news. No, but it's plane specific stability. That's what you need.
Yeah,
it's plane specific. Like
it's standing up. By the way,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your hip thrust.
Okay.
Sorry.
Dim the lights. Thank you.
No. Okay. So I really like this. So this is, I think, and this is really good for their listeners, because if you're listening right now and you're like, okay, these guys are starting to get me interested in the pursuit of powerlifting, but yet maybe I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. You just listed off a series of great exercises you should do first and get good at before you're probably ready to really do like a good heavy loaded bilateral squat. So there's the squat.
We had a great video series.
You talked about the pull up. For the deadlift. Give me some bench press. What do you?
Bench press is an interesting one, right? Because there's an obvious difference between the bench press and the squat and the deadlift, right? We're horizontal, and we have external stability from the bench. So the bench press really kind of changes the game, and it levels out the playing field a lot in powerlifting, which is great. Because you can be a really good bencher, but usually the mechanics and leverages that make you a good bencher
make you a terrible deadlifter.
Deadlifter, it's like, right? Oh fuck, the bar's all the way down there now.
T-Rex arms are okay.
How can I bench press this deadlift somehow? So it is good in that sense, but like I always test people. Like, okay, when it comes to function of the shoulder, who on this planet gets the most out of their shoulders? Who is the precipice? Who is the epitome of shoulder function? What would you guys say? Like, I got a few people in mind. There's no
like athletes. Like, are we talking about?
I mean, I like going. I like going
Swimmers?
specific. Swimmers are up there, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think who else, because great rotation. Swimming is a great one. Who else would do something like
volleyball?
Up there, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are on the
Baseball
thought
players,
process.
yeah.
Baseball, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that was
I think
my thought.
Randy is like the dude.
Randy.
He's out there smoking pigeons. Like that's fun. So I would go too. I would go. I usually like when I talk about this, it's usually I put up a slide of Randy, and I fucking hate baseball. But when it comes to like when I start to talk about neuroanatomy and like reflexes and the way like the dorsal root ganglion works, you can't have a conversation without talking about baseball, right? Like it's a boring ass sport, but there's a guy who's 6'7".
It's American.
Throwing 100 miles an hour. He's 60 feet away from you. By the time he throws that ball, he's 10
the
feet
physics
away
are
from
insane.
you.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very impressive. And when it comes to shoulder function, it's like, yeah, like Julius Maddox just benched 765 in the gym the other day. Right. So imagine holding that over your face. That's 10 pounds over my max squat, BT dubs, by the way. But that's still not impressive as Randy throwing 100 miles an hour, 105 miles an hour, right? And then another one would be a boxer. Right, like
Sure.
Fury just went fucking KO'd the bomber. Like Mike Tyson to me is usually someone that I reference a lot. And what is different about the way Randy and Tyson and Fury use their shoulders as opposed to like say a Julius Maddox or how we use the shoulders in powerlifting? What's the difference?
And it's connected to their hip.
How dynamic the movement is.
Yeah, so the utilization of the scapula, right? Like Randy Johnson would be a dog shit pitcher if he kept his shoulder blades down and back, shoulder blades down and back, chest up, chest up, chest up, chest up, shoulder blades down and back. Like he'd be
So how
Tyson,
dynamic he can move it.
right? Tyson would be, he'd probably still be able to murder you, but like he wouldn't be as effective as if he didn't upwardly rotate his scapula, right? When we encourage in the bench press, shoulder blades back, shoulder blades back, shoulder blades back, which is great, yeah. And I think the offset the potential to mitigate the potential damage of isolating that dysfunctional pattern, and dysfunction is like, look, that's not how we use our shoulder blades when we walk, right? Like that's not how our shoulders work. They integrate this thoracic rotation with this upward this upward rotation of the scap and internal rotation, and then the opposite cascade of events happens on extension, right? Where we extend, we retract and depress, then we extend the shoulder. So there's a lot to it. So I like an exercise like a windmill, like a kettlebell windmill, as an adjunct, or like a landmine press, something that's going to promote that upward rotation of the scap under load. Utilize the serratus anterior, sort of unwind that reciprocal inhibition, rhomboid counteracts serratus thing. So anything that promotes the serratus anterior, anything overhead, pull-ups are great, barbell overhead press if you have the range of motion.
Push-ups.
Love the windmill for that.
Push-ups,
I didn't even think of it
I
for
know, I
that
didn't
as a
think of using
prerequisite
that.
to the bench.
So the windmill for me is
cool.
big for a few things, because the prerequisite of proper execution is all lives and dies with rotation of the thoracic spine. Right. We focus a lot on this global extension and like, oh, you want to fix your shoulders, you extend your upper back, get rid of that poor posture, but unilateral rotation of the thoracic spine is integral, right? Like, think the thoracic spine kind of moves through like two planes of motion that we really worry about. Like, we worry about extension and we worry about rotation. Lateral flexion, not so much, but we have 2 dimensions at the spine. We have 3 dimensions at the shoulder. The serratus anterior is this gateway, this portal, this transference of force from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions at the shoulder. So making sure that we can get adequate extension and rotation is a mobility prerequisite to training the stability of the serratus. It's a very economical exercise because it gives you a lot of information. If someone can do this properly, they have the prerequisite extension and rotation to do so. If not, and we see over rotation of the humerus, look, you're funneling forces into your rotator cuff, into this glenohumeral joint, because we're not moving properly at the thoracic spine. It's a very visceral experience when someone does that. Go, oh, ow. It's like, yeah, ow, because that needs to move better, right? And that's a whole other conversation about like injury and pain and all that. But
now, I would think that probably is very similar for the overhead press then too. I mean, I would think that the windmill would still fall in that same category.
roughly speaking, but it doesn't have the bilateral rotation prerequisite, because like a proper windmill, like when most people do them, I don't know who teaches it, but someone's going around teaching windmills with like, you open up like the one hip, and then it's almost like, have you ever seen like the old bank robbery movies, like, or like an Ocean's 11 where there's like the laser field?
Yeah.
Like there's a laser field in front of the bank vault that's like stopping, like, oh, don't break it'll trip the wire. So people are just like, just tilting off to the side like this. It's like, what are you doing? Hinge forward so you can actually test how much extension and rotation you need. The people are just like sliding the hand down the seam of the pants and just like laterally moving away like that. But it's like
leaning over the side.
Yeah, go look, connect index finger to index finger, extend and rotate through the thoracic spine. And that middle finger
getting down there is due to the rotation of it.
Right. And that's what I love about like some of the stability drills. And a lot of people don't really understand stability as a separate adaptation. They just say, oh, strengthen your serratus. Like, no. That would be like me trying to get a bigger squat by running a marathon. 2 totally different adaptations. Ability to exert force versus resist force is the difference between strength and stability. So it's like, if I can pick an exercise that, look, if someone can't do this, it tells me exactly where to point with mobility drills. Oh yeah, easy. Or if on the contrary, to streamline my approach, if someone can do this, I don't need to waste my time stretching and rotating and foam rolling. Like it is a moot point that will not help us improve the base level function of the serratus, then I'm not going to waste time in it. So it's like, I love it. I love the windmill for the bench press because it tells me, look, can we get out of this pattern that we're in? Can we integrate function of the shoulder, as the bench press per definition is quote unquote dysfunctional, as we flex the humerus on a retracted scap, which is dysfunctional.
It's so funny because the windmill is such an old-timey strength exercise that nobody did for a long time, and now you're seeing more people do. What about a bent press? That was a huge lift way back in the day with strongmen, where they would test themselves by, like Eugene Sandow doing a bent press with 300 pounds. Do you ever incorporate anything like that?
As I deal mostly online, no, but if it's part of a sport and I'm dealing with a strongman, it's like, look, if you have strong enough lats, your low back is going to be just fine. Like people, again, it's the base level.
People don't realize how much of a stabilizer the lats are, do they?
People on the whole don't realize the difference between muscle function and muscle action, right? They only see the bodybuilding nomenclature of origin to insertion, and they don't see the global utilization of muscles as a dual purpose to stabilize and strengthen, right? And that's like a muscle functions like
what a mouthful, but what a great point.
I know.
Yeah.
Let's rewind that
This
one.
is the only way. There's one.
Don't worry, we always put an episode out after your episode where we
dare
break
you to
everything
try and
down
say
again.
that.
Jordan Shallow. It's a mouthful.
There's one gear. I've been called that before. No, I'm not going to say it.
No, but what a great
it's a
statement
brilliant
though.
point,
We
though.
always think about the flexing of the muscle, the building of the muscle, thinking of that way. What about the other functions of that and how important that role is in just overall function of your body and how it moves and how it protects itself?
Yeah, and then you can, like, I've done this. So I mean, shameless plug. My book's coming out later this year, and a lot of that is indexing. Like, look, I think when you Wikipedia something, it should say origin, insertion, innervation, arterial blood supply, and function. Right? Because right now it's just, as it moves from origin to insertion, how does the joint that surrounds or these muscles cross, how do they act? Where it's like, no, but how do these muscles act when we walk and breathe? Like, I could jam my thumb into your scalenes and, like, all of a sudden he'd be like, oh, get your fucking thumb out of there. But it's not like, if we think origin insertion of this muscle that sort of like starts in our C-spine and attaches onto our upper ribs, it's like, well, if I moved origin to insertion, I'd be kind of like dropping my head off to the side. It will inherently be sore on most people, at least on like one side. But it's like, they're not spastic. Sal's not walking around all day doing this twitchy thing. He's not moving it from origin to insertion.
I do sometimes, but
He's not training. He's not overtraining or overutilizing the action. Maybe he's stressed out because he's not in Hawaii anymore, and now he's like breathing into his
Damn, I gotta work.
breathing into his work. Come on, fellas.
Adam's stressing about like crazy.
Let's be serious here. This is work, but it's like
Trust
the
me.
function of those scalenes is to elevate the upper ribs during breath cycle, right? So it's like every muscle, the bicep has like an incredible function that, the bicep sort of pledged a frat. It was like, oh, it's all show, no go. It's like, really? First thing, I got hit by a Chevy Suburban 5 years ago. Shout out Santa Clara drivers. While I was on my bicycle, no love. I was on my fucking 10-speed.
did you break the truck?
We hate bicyclists here, dude. You know that.
But the bicep
He
curl,
gets sued from it.
yeah, she was crying. I threw my bike at the car with a torn labrum. It probably wasn't the best idea.
You hit the wrong guy.
But the first thing I did once I got my range of motion back was start doing bicep curls, because I understand the biceps function. It's not just to fill sleeves and pick up chicks and polos. It's like, no, there's a huge function, and every muscle has one. It's just not many people think to look and to index, or even more importantly, to train it.
Okay, so what? So give me your. So the windmill use would not be for overhead press. Tell me what overhead press prereq is then.
I would break down into range of motion. Can we move there passively? Like, can we get the extension of the thoracic spine, the retraction and depression? Like, I would focus more almost on the strength of the lower trap first. Right? Can we actively get into this range, strengthen the lower? Because a big prerequisite in training stability is having the range of motion to get into unstable positions. Right? This is this whole ethos that we build around mobility, stability, strength. It's like, yeah, it's a cool tagline and a hashtag, and you could trademark and it looks cool on our website. But it's literally, that's the order of operations. It's like, you need to be able to, and a lot of times, like, you have to do this contemporaneously. You do it all at once. Like, it's not like we're just going to stretch someone for 3 weeks and then stabilize them for 3 weeks and then strengthen them. It's like, no, how do you integrate all this into a coherent and congruent program?
Okay, so let's pretend that this person can do like a wall slide, right?
Yeah.
Comfortably,
Sure.
full extension, everything, and keep their ribs from flaring. We look pretty decent. Do you go straight into overhead pressing, or is there?
No, a pressing progression for me that I use quite frequently is start them off with like a dumbbell floor press. Then they're totally stabilized. Can they deal with this little bit of instability in the medium of the bar? On the back end, I'm working on like the 4 functional subcomponents of the shoulder. Do they need thoracic extension? Do they need to train in early stages retraction and depression of the scap? Or are they late stage? Do they need to train overhead stability of the serratus utilizing a windmill? Are they inhibited or facilitated rather in internal rotation? Do they need to stretch their lats? Do they need to stretch their pecs? Do they need to stretch their delts? And then do they have strength or stability of the posterior shoulder? So the shoulder really breaks down into those 4 subcomponents. But from a pressing progression, yeah, if I have someone who's relatively detrained and I'm trying to like work on these things on the front end and integrate this approach into an actual exercise, which I think a lot of people like, go do yoga. It's like, what? That's like, have you ever had the old Christmas lights? Where it's like one bulb goes out and the whole fucking strand goes.
Yeah.
And your dad's like, look, Canadian Tire.
Those are old.
Shout out Canada. Like, Canadian Tire's around the corner, Dad. Take my allowance and go buy a new strand. He goes, nope, we got a box of spare bulbs over here. You're going to sit there and do the whole thing. It's like, yeah, Merry fucking Christmas to me. But it's like doing a yoga class would be like sitting there changing all those bulbs and not plugging it in. It's like, I want to make some changes in perception of my thoracic spine mobility, my retraction and depression of my scap, like my bias towards internal rotation. Then I want to load the damn thing. I want to plug the damn thing in to see if the changes I'm making are working, run a current through it. So I'll do that stuff on the front end, like dumbbell floor press, then put them on a bench, a little bit more unstable. Then just go take this adjustable bench, and that's the greatest training tool you have. So before I go standing overhead with a bar, I'll go flat on the floor, minimal range of motion, unstable medium, work on the back end mobility, stability stuff. Next week, boop, up on a bench. The client goes, ooh, I'm on a bench now. Like, what's going on here? What's this new shiny red ball I have? They see novelty, I see specificity. Then I go 15-degree incline, greater range of motion, same weight. Great, they're getting better at the skill. They've adapted 1 or 2 weeks there. They show an improvement in their ability to stabilize or an improvement in range of motion on the front end. I just keep putting that thing all the way up to the 90. Then we stand with it. Then I put a barbell in their hand.
Oh, excellent.
Right? The medium is the message.